Okay, so this deck profile, we'll be doing another Overlord deck, but this time we'll be focusing on the Abyss Summoning mechanic that we haven't covered in any of the other previous decks. So we'll just get right into it, and then we'll go through the different cards and then what it can be. And then again, the deck list will be in the description below if you don't get a chance to see the full names of certain cards, if you're trying to look up for like the deck list itself. And then just note that, again, this deck has been only tested a little bit, so some people might have different choices, different CNT counts or counters. So just know that some of the choices are made for, like people that I usually play with. So that's why some deck choices will be a little bit different than what some other people might use. So the first card we're going to have is for Vasaurus Rex. This is one from the starter deck from the first set, and then its CNT is that if you have 2 lesser life or less, you end the turn. So that means if like you're in the middle of damage and you hit this, it actually just ends all of the damage right there, and then immediately ends your turn. It's also very bigly statted at 7/7. It can't be put in your defense zone, but it also has the ability of when you Abyss Summon it, you can destroy 1 unit and then you get to heal a life. So even though we are in Overlord and we have less life, it also means that we actually hit this damage limit pretty quickly, as well as we're still able to heal out damage using Vasaurus Rex. He also can't be placed into the defense zone, as that's pretty relevant. So you can't just shove him into the defense zone and then be a very good defender. But then that also leads us into the second card, which is another Vasaurus Rex, but this one is the fully armored. This is the new one from set 3. That we're using. So again, same stats of 7/7/2, but this one is if you have 3 life or less. If you hit it off the CNT, it ends the opponent's turn. But this one also has it when you Abyss Summon it, you destroy all enemy set cards, and then you heal 1 life. So again, it still heals life, but then this one targets set cards, while as Vasaurus Rex will destroy other cards. But then full armor also gets defended when you Abyss Summon it. So if you attack with it, it can go into your defense zone. So that's a little bit more different than Vastorus, than the first Vasaurus Rex. And it is important to know that for his Abyssal Concerto, his requirement is 4 darkness cards without CNT from your graveyard. So when you're playing the deck, it is very important that you are conscious of the materials you are sending back for either or. Because like with this Vasaurus Rex, he doesn't actually care what darkness cards you put back, whereas Vasaurus Rex full armor does. Next we have Vortanis. So this is one of the Abyss summoners that we use, and then it has the ability of when you play it for touchdown, you can essentially mill a level 0 darkness card, as well as a Viola from the first set that we are running in this deck as well. So this one is mostly just for a miller. It's a good opening card to have, because again, you can send some of your zeros like Nibelung that we'll go over later on in the deck. Next we have 2 Viola Furiosa. So this one is when you Abyss Summon it, you can destroy all other units except itself, including your own stuff. But it does have like 3 strikes, so at worst, because in Overlord you're playing everything at 1 cost, you usually will never use it for its ability to discard it and then draw another card, because you could actually just play it as a 7/6/3, which again, with this amount of toughness as HP, it does go around cards like Lucifer, or even cards such as like Embrace of Aeons. And then with one thing with Viola's Abyssal Concerto is that it does require you to use a level 0, 1, 2, and 3 within your stuff, as well as a total of 5 combined. So again, when you Abyssal Summon, sometimes you want to keep track of what you're putting back, so that way you can leave yourself open to the different options for what you can Abyss Summon. We also have 2 Mortanas. So again, we're not using it for its ability to DR to make your events cheaper, but it's mostly as a counter to draw cards. It is also a darkness card, which is important. So again, you can put it back for Abyssal Concerto for things like Viola, as well as Vasaurus Rex. And it is a level 2 for Viola, and usually level 2 is sometimes the little bit harder level to have in normal decks, but we're only running 2 because of the deck constraints, because we are running quite a bit of level 3s. Next we have 2 Zoa. So this is another Abyssal Summoner. It houses, so when we it can't be placed in defense zone, but usually when we play it, we're using it to instantly abyssal summon. It also has the ability of, if it's put into the graveyard because of your opponent, you can do an abyssal summoning. So it just means that you are being allowed to abyssal summon no matter what, unless your opponent, completely negates its effects. Next, we're running for Dark Knight Vamels. So this card is really good. As a defensive, it is also a darkness again. So again, if we pitch it, we can DR2, and then we can prevent 2 damage. And then just being a level 1 darkness again for Viola, as well as a non-CNT darkness card for full armor. We're also seeing 2 Skyline Magus. This one's for abyssal summoning. It has pretty high HP. That unless they're using cards like Aeons, just completely wipe it. It will get through like normal abilities. Next we have 4 Dark Knight Geist. So this is also from the starter deck, from the first set. But this one is just a 4/1/1 that against the darkness, but it's when it gets into the graveyard, you get to mill 1, because again, we do want to fill up our graveyard with darkness cards so that we can start doing abyssal summonings. As well as also having 4 power is pretty good for clearing still, even though 5 is usually like the big number you want to hit, but 4 is still not bad. Next we have 4 Dark Knight Gastel. So again, another darkness card, but this one has the ability that when you're using it for Abyss Concerto, you can treat it as being any level between numbers, 1 number from between 0 to 2. So you can count it as a 0, a 1, or a 2, depending what you need, especially if you need to use it for cards like that, for Viola. And again, it's another darkness target for full armor. We're also running for Nibelung. So again, this is one of the best darkness cards for Abyssal Concerto, because again, when you use it for Abyssal Summoning, it does count as 2 cards, and it does treat its level as being any numbers from 0 to 3. So again, sometimes for like Viola, it can be the ones that you fix, but you need to fix to get to Viola, as well as for like any of the other units, it does count as 2 cards for darkness. So like with full armor, you could use like 2 Nibelungs to fulfill its complete Abyssal Concerto, or again, it just makes it essentially cheaper that you don't need as many darkness cards. And again, this is usually the first target you will mill with Vasaurus, Vortanis, so that way you can get in the graveyard as well as a Viola, and then you can set up your darknesses that way. This is also from the first starter deck, so again, usually the first starter deck has quite a bit of cards that will still be used. Next we have 2 Jack the Ripper. So this one is just another darkness card, but it has the ability that because we are sometimes needing to clear other units, even though it only has 3 power, sometimes it can kill, like Cat, Sith, Ragdolls, the level 0 Genesis familiar, and then there's other units that are like usually pretty small that you can use this to kill, and you get to mill 2 cards when you do. So it's just another way to sift through a deck so we can start milling some of our darkness to fill our graveyard so we can start doing abyssal summons. Next we also have 2 Black Cat sets. So this one is another darkness card, but its CNT is pretty important in that it does heal 1 life and deal 2 damage. So it doesn't actually, as a counter, it doesn't actually prevent the damage. It actually does the same amount of damage or more if it's like your first damage and it's the only one. But because of the heal ability, you can take out cards like Nibelung or any of your other non-CNT darkness cards that you want out of your graveyard. And again, it also has the ability of when you use it for Abyss Concerto, you can have it be treated from any level between 0 and 3, so similar to Nibelung. So if you do need to put it back, it can fail your level requirements for Viola. We're also running 2 in one breath, Alive to Death. So again, it's a level 2 darkness. And again, with Overlord, we are being allowed to play it for 1 rather than the 2. And then it just has the ability of you can choose 1 level 1 or less, destroy it, and then if you do, you get to heal a life. So again, even though we have the lower life count of 11, we can still kind of facilitate our life by healing out some of like our darkness targets to Abyss Concerto, like again Nibelungs, they might get stuck in damage, or even like extra Violas that might get stuck in damage. You can use this to pull them out. We're also running 4 of the Field for the Fell Dragon Temple. So this card is really good because what it does is a lot of decks in this format with Sky Strike Arrow, which is the level 1 field for Vonar, so for yellow again, Has ability to remove, one of its abilities is to remove 2 cards from a graveyard. But with Fell Dragon Temple, the first ability is that once this card is in play, essentially your cards in your graveyard are not affected by your opponent's effect. So it means that they cannot target them. So that way you can Abyss summon, what you need without worrying about your opponent putting them back or getting rid of them before you get the chance to. And then again, as you get other ones, it is a darkness card. So if you do end up, getting the 1 copy and then you want to discard these, it may not be that bad for the last card that we have where you can discard darkness cards. And again, it also turns our non-darkness cards or non-CNT darkness cards into darkness attributes once it has 2 or less. So it'll make like Skyline into a darkness card as well as the next event that we are playing. But this card is very good because again it gets around cards like Scar Strike, Arrow, which a lot of decks like Gem Summon itself will usually sometimes struggle with if they get that online. The last card we have is for making a killing. So again, this card is good for pitching, random darkness cards that we end up getting in our hand, and we get to redraw so we can draw into our Abyss Summoners. And then we can, go on that way. And then this also lets us, again, if you get multiple Fell Dragon Temples, this can also become a darkness card so that you can use for Abyss Concerto if you do need to. But that's the deck for the Overlord Abyss Summoning. So again, the deck list will be in the description below. And again, sometimes depending on your stuff, some people might only run like 1 Viola because you want to try to hit Vasaurus, which will also reduce your level count. Because maybe some people don't want to run like Black Cat Sith. Because again, sometimes it potentially could hurt you. So again, sometimes you just got to figure out what works best for you. Like maybe even cutting down like maybe on 3 Rex, 3 and 3. But having 8 abilities to potentially stop your opponent's turn, I find is really good. And usually it's one of those where, again, if you're playing like for fun, it's usually one of those abilities that, it just, can get your friends and, some people might, find good laughs in that. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and then I'll see you guys in the next one.